This is the story of a girl who had to grow up far too soon. It's the story of a fractured family, of abuse, a marriage rushed by pregnancy, the beginning of a slow, painful spiral that ended with our guest living in a tent on Sembawang Beach, pregnant with 2 children by her side. But this isn't a story about falling. It's about getting back up, about choosing growth, healing, and purpose. Welcome to the Brown Box. I'm Rani, and today's guest is Liyana Dhamirah. She's the author of the book Homeless. She's a serial entrepreneur. She works with Aware and was a political candidate in Singapore's general elections. In this episode, we trace her remarkable story from homelessness to hope and hear how Liyana not only rebuilt her life, but is now helping others to do the same. We start where we usually start, at the beginning. I ask Liyana what was her first memory of childhood.
Oh, that's a very heartwarming picture that suddenly just popped up. I remember a picture back then that I had taken with my third sister, who just turned 1 year old at that point. And in that picture, there is me with the unruly hair in singlets and jeans. And then I had my second sibling, who is my brother, who is 2 years younger than me, and he's well donned in a shirt and a pants, look very neat and proper. And then my little sister, who just turned 1, was in an adorable dress. As I was looking at that picture, I was like, where was I? What did I do? That I feel so unruly in this picture, like as if I'm forgotten in some manner, or I chose not to dress up for the day for that special occasion. I think I was about 5, 6 year old then. I do not like dresses because to me, I find it can get in my way if I want to climb some playground or things like that. So my preferred choice of clothing would be jeans and shirts normally. I think I approached life back then more towards being more liberal, more free, not being hampered with any or much rather responsibilities, having a say, having the courage to voice out my thoughts and not withholding any back, and to say my truth in any form or any point of time when I was going through childhood. Yeah.
Wear what you want, say what you want, do what you want. That's how I grew up too, or at least that's how I remember it. But I also remember when that freedom slipped away, when the boys who used to just be friends suddenly couldn't come over anymore, when what you wore began to matter more than what you dreamt about, what you wanted to become. So I asked Liyana, where did it begin for her? When did the world start telling her to make herself smaller?
It doesn't start with just one point. It starts with progression of many points. And there were times where I was told when I was young that all girls should be wearing more dresses. All girls should wear more modestly. And especially with us coming from the religion of Islam, although back then when I was younger, I didn't adorn the hijab, I was told to dress more modestly. I shouldn't wear revealing clothes. I was also told that, oh, girls behave this certain way. And when they sit, they need to sit properly. For me, I believe that progression of many instances where you were told no, not to, and being told, okay, this way, as the conformation to whatever that is accepted as normal or accepted as pleasant or accepted from girls at that point of time. I believe that clipped me back then. I can't point exactly when it started happening, but I can recall that it's many instances throughout when I was growing up. When I was 5 years old, and back then I was in kindergarten, I was coloring. I can't remember what exact drawing was it, but I remember that I was so happy coloring. And I'm someone who loved to just do something not within what was being told. I can cite examples. Okay, if my teacher were to tell me, okay, color this in this particular specific color, naturally, the Liyana in me will say, no, I'm not going to color that color. I'm going to choose my own color that I like in color. Why should I follow your color advice? So I will do that instead. And I think because of the nature of how I think that way when I was younger, when I had that homework presented to me to color back at home, I was so happy coloring it without any rules or guidelines. And naturally, I color outside the lines as well. And I was so proud of my masterpiece back then when I was 5 to showcase it to my father back then, who just came back from work. I honestly, at that point, I was expecting good job, something like that, praises or compliments from my dad. But what I got instead was a scolding and him saying to me, like, you should be coloring within the lines. You shouldn't color outside of the lines. This looks so bad. Don't do this anymore. I think that instances, and from what I can recall, it follow up with other instances where if I were to color just a bit, a tad outside of the line, that scenario would then follow up with me receiving scoldings and also a beating by leather belts. So my father normally wear belts and he would just take out his belt and just whip me with it. That was part of the scoldings that I would get. And to me back then, it seems almost as a norm because it happens almost frequently. You can start from either colorings outside the line or not managing or not doing chores proper or not taking care of my younger siblings in a manner that he would like us to. I would say that, truth be told, I cannot remember any moments of joy prior to my 12-year-old self. One thing I can remember that brought me much joy was during my 12-year-old birthday, where I had all my best friends and my primary school friends over at my home, which felt back then like a castle to me because it's a big house. And we were celebrating like multiple occasions, if I'm not wrong, on that day. Like, I think some festive occasion along with my birthday that falls that same day. We were playing games. And I was coming here at this place to you, Rani. I saw one of my childhood favorite game outside. Yes, it's called the Chongka. The one that has 7 holes and then you can use marbles to play them. And it just brought back a smile on my face. I was like heading to you, to the studio.
As I edit this, that moment keeps returning to me. Liyana, 5 years old, proudly showing her father her coloring book, the colors flowing wild and free beyond the lines. And instead of wonder, there was punishment. It's such a powerful metaphor, isn't it? Because it was never really about the coloring. It's about learning that the world has lines drawn everywhere, invisible boundaries around how to behave, how to sit, how to take up space. Lessons that follow us, shape us long after we've put down the coloring books. But just as Liyana was recalling one of her hardest memories, her face lights up, completely unexpectedly, and she remembers Chongkak, a childhood game with a wooden board and marbles. And just like that, we moved from pain to nostalgia. That, I would come to learn, is Liyana's superpower, the ability to carry sorrow and still choose joy.
I come from a dad who has roots from Indonesia. My dad's family is what we call the Boyanis. And they are originally, if I'm not wrong, islanders. They usually sail and fish and do a lot of water activities. And in knowing that side of me exists in my DNA, in my genes, I then understood why I have the love for water. Whenever I need to recharge, I seek water. So I think that kind of like speaks to me. Then, on the other hand, on my mother's side, what I heard, at least from what I was told, was that we came from Malacca in Malaysia. So that was our great-grandfathers, great-grandmothers. And we were more of the heritage of Babas. So it's a mix of Chinese and Malays.
Liyana turned 12 on a day full of celebration. It was her birthday, Chinese New Year, and Hari Raya all at once. The house was loud with laughter, food, and family. But that night, after the guests had gone, her parents sat her down. "We're getting divorced," they said. And just like that, the celebration ended. As she says in the book, news so bitter that the lingering sweetness from the birthday cake disappeared instantaneously. Her father, who had already been more absent than present, would soon disappear completely. To me, Liyana says in the book, having an absent father is the same as not having one at all.
It's interesting when we touch on this topic because I remember when I was 15 years old, and in Singapore at least, we have a milestone where we change our pink ICs. So 15 years old was the time that we were supposed to create our very first IC. And back then, gosh, I can remember this when I was 15, that I cried because I do not want my absent father's race to be reflected on my NRIC. And I honestly was sharing things like, I don't even speak Boyanese. Why do I need to have this Boyanese race in my IC? I don't even know a single thing about being a Boyan. Why do I even want? And I don't feel affiliated or associated with that race in itself. But it is in me. That's part of me. Back then, being a child, kind of like reject that because my father was nowhere to be found. And he usually do not even ask about our whereabouts or our well-being. To me, having an absent father is equates to not having a father at all. At that point is where my parents has already divorced. So I naturally tried to reject that side of me. I remember that particular instance where I cried, not wanting to have that race being reflected on my NRIC. And I was like pleading to just put it as Malay. Law stated that any birth child of Singaporeans were to follow, at least in our religion, the father's race. So regardless if you associate or know anything about the particular race, just because you were born out of a father who happens to be, like in my case, Boyanese, so I will have to follow that.
I asked Liyana more about her mother, the parent that chose to stay, the parent that now had to support 4 young children.
I am proud of my mom because when we were in a single parent household back then, she tried her very best to work like 2 jobs to continue putting food on the table. While from time to time, she had challenges getting the financial support from my dad back then. I remember there was once she was a clerk somewhere. So she was doing administrative work and she was just only bringing in a meager salary. But she makes sure that food is still there in the cabinets of the kitchen, whatever it means. That it can be like just grains of rice or it can be instant noodles. So she makes sure that is always available to as much extent as she can, as she copes with the bills, as she copes with everything else. I admire my mother for that, for her toughness. And I think because I see her in that light, that brings me my own courage and my own toughness back in times of despair. Because at times I will just sit back and reflect, what would mother do in this situation? And the relationship that I have with my mother is not, oh, I love you, you love me, or, oh, mother, we can talk about things. No, I think the relationship that I have with my mother is more of a silent acknowledgement that I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm here for you. Though we don't communicate much, but the presence of being there for one another in silence, even not asking questions, even not conversing and all that. Yeah, she's there. My mother depend on me to bring that for my younger siblings, like being the carer for them, bringing them to the playground to play, changing their diapers and all that. So I think in a way, my mother's dependent on me to help her with this part of what she's juggling with, helped me to then hone the skills of my own motherly traits in a way, or hone the skills of adulting and knowing how to change diapers at the age of 12, 13. That's why when you asked me about childhood earlier just now, Raini, I have to be honest in saying that I don't really recall much of my childhood.
Liyana's childhood wasn't the kind you see on TV or read about in books. It was compressed, a quick push into adulthood. She became a parent to her siblings, worrying about things like savings and food. When there wasn't enough food at school, she told her mother gentle lies, saying that a friend would share lunch with her, so it was okay. She scrounged for coins and learned to stretch one packet of instant noodles into more than one meal. Even a 10-cent coin was a treasure, Liyana says in her book. But through it all, small moments of joy. She and her siblings turned their old frayed mattress into a lifeboat. They held on to each other, laughing as they pretended to survive a sinking ship. And that's the thing with children. Even when everything's falling apart, they find a way to float. I like to have these conversations because I feel like people just make the assumption that everyone has the same family.
The same look in every household, that there is a dad and a mom present, and then the children are all giggling happily, running around, playing with one another, and everything seems fine. To this point, I will have to bring out that when I was growing up, from 12 onwards, it is that longing and that desire in me as I watch the TV. And usually what is portrayed is family sitting around a dinner table, giggling, having fun. And I usually am envious of that whole setting in itself, whether it's real or not, honestly. I envy, oh, why can't I have that? Why can't my siblings and me have that?
As a young girl who spent most of my life in boarding school, though with far more financial stability than Liyana, I felt this too. The quiet search for a perfect home, the wondering, why doesn't my family gather the way other families do? I've had moments on long walks where I'd catch a glimpse through a window of a family around a dining table and feel that ache, that longing for what was not the norm for me. And like I said to Liyana, I want to have these conversations because so many of us live without that picture-perfect version of home. But even in all that, Liyana found something that gave her strength, something that opened up her world just a little bit more.
Back then, I believe dance gave me a sense of freedom, a sense of escape away from my own reality. That was one. Secondly, it gives me a sense of freedom in a way where when I can dance and can perform, it brings me a source of income that I can help my single mother with. Lastly, dance is a way for me to be part of a community. Yeah, so dance to me back then was all of that. And being usually surprised with what kind of movements our body can do. I look forward to surprising myself all the time back then as I was doing dance, and the creativity that comes with it. Because in that moments when I was given the opportunity to discover dance, to perform, I was also given the opportunity to choreograph. And to me, it touches to the core of me who likes to create. I felt so seen at that moment where I am given the opportunity to choreograph and build a dance routine for the group. The downside of dance is the attention it can get you, or rather the unnecessary attention that you do not actually ask for. Men coming to me soliciting companionship or acts of intimacy, which to me at that point, being a teenager, I'm like, what's going on? I was 15. I was shocked to even learn that, oh, in Malay we call this perempuan joget. So perempuan joget means like a lady or a girl who dance. And usually narrative itself holds a negative connotations, which is they appear to be as someone who are loose or someone who you can pay for certain services, and someone who you can just buy over with money, essentially. And it shocked me when I learned about that narrative back then. I was like, where does this even come from? But then as I grew up and I understand history better, and as I probe more on where does this kind of thoughts perspective comes from, that was when I realized that, oh, it started way back in the 50s era, where women who dance are seen as cheap, as seen as someone who you can just buy over with money.
While we were talking about this part of Liyana's life, I felt a quiet unease because the thing that gave her the most joy, dance, movement, freedom, also brought with it attention she never asked for. I was not planning to ask her about this incident, but something compels me to. And also, I know that you had a horrible encounter during one of those nights. I would like to talk about it. You're okay with it?
Yeah.
So you're about 15, 16.
15, 16 age.
Doing what all girls should be doing, and maybe sneaking away.
Yeah, sneaking away, going to a party with friends for a barbecue, if I'm not wrong, that night. And we had it at a chalet. So the setting is it's a building where one of the parents rented for this party for this person who, I don't know, having birthday or something. And then we were invited, and it was a friend of a friend of a friend. So no direct relation. Being young, you're like, okay, party, let's go, just have fun. And to me, being part of the group is like feeling belong in a way, and feeling like, oh, I can do something outside of my usual having responsibilities, taking care of my younger siblings, all that. And those were moments for me to just escape and just have fun, right? Earlier, I was sharing that when I was doing dance, it brought about like unnecessary attention, which I didn't even ask for in the first place. I come across this guy who have expressed that he likes me, and he has been there from time to time in our group setting when we were hanging out, or he will appear at some of the dance competition, things like that. And back then, what I can remember was that I felt uncomfortable with him. I can't explain what exactly, but my gut just tell me to just keep myself away from this person, because I many times have tried to establish boundary and say that thank you for expressing that you like me, but I would like us to just remain as acquaintance, because I don't really know him that well, even to even call him a friend. Yeah. I remember clearly stating that I thank you for liking me, but I'm sorry, I don't like, I can't even say I don't like him, but I just, nah, we are not on the same page. Of course, clearly he was upset, but that conversation was way before the night when we met again at that chalet during that party. And seeing him again, I felt awkward back then, but at the same time, there's just something in me that said, get myself away from him. It just felt uneasy and uncomfortable. And then little that I can remember was that I slipped into and out and in of unconsciousness. I would have thought of or believe in hindsight, looking back, that my drink, one of the drinks that I took during that party was Pike. I don't drink alcohol at that time. But after that, then I can remember slipping in and out of consciousness and remembering there's this black figure pinning me down, and I felt pain. I felt like I felt sharp pain. The only single thing I remember was I woke up that morning in one of the rooms in that chalet, naked, under a sheet. I remember looking for my clothes. I remember feeling ashamed, feeling confused, feeling totally devastated because I don't really know what happened. What I can remember was a lot of embarrassment. I tiptoe myself out of that chalet because I can see some of my friends are still around sleeping. And my only thought back then was to just quickly get out of there, get a cab, and just go home. to where I at that moment felt safer. I discovered myself reaching home and being in the shower for 2 hours, still in my clothes and trying to feel not dirty. The funny thing is, the blame was put on me, and and in the same line, I blame myself as well. So I kept on saying that I didn't take care of myself. I didn't watch out for any dodgy or very suspicious behavior, or I wasn't alert of my surroundings. I remember what I wore that day because we have a picture, and it was like a round neck t-shirt with a denim skirt. Yeah, so I was wearing a denim skirt and a round neck t-shirt. And I was like thinking, was I revealing myself too much? So I was blaming me. Learning what I have learned now, I would say to Liyana back then, you're not at fault. You're not to be blamed. You are not alone. And you are strong. You are a survivor. Yeah. I remember back then I kept on not only blaming myself, but carrying myself like as if I am easy to be victimized. I am easy to be taken advantage of. I developed that sense of vigilance or hypervigilance at least, and being much more careful of my surroundings. Thereafter, I remember just accepting the fact that I'm just broken for whatever broken means to me at that point. I was not kind to myself back then.
We share stories like this on the Brown Box for a reason, so that anyone listening, especially someone who's been through something they never should have had to endure, knows that they're not alone, and so that we can learn from each other's strength. So I asked Liyana, what would she say to a woman who's feeling unsafe, dealing with unwanted attention, or maybe a woman who's been harmed and is still trying to put the pieces back together again?
I would say to that girl, lady, whoever who's going through that instances, to trust your gut instinct. One. Two, to always keep yourself safe. And safety means different things for many people. Create a safe environment for yourself, be it having a support circle, having a safety plan, be it having a place where you can feel really safe at. So create that safe environment for yourself. And thirdly, if you're being met with a persistent man for whatever his reasons might be, and if you at any inkling felt that you're being harassed, protect yourself. Protect yourself by not only having those first two things in place, but perhaps it if really needs to and requires to at that point to get the law in place to protect yourself. Because now we have things like the protection against harassment, POHA, yeah, and all that. So protect yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Then Liyana met Fazli on her 16th birthday at McDonald's.
Yeah, that was shortly after I experienced the assault. And that was, I think, 3 to 4 months in after the incident. And back then, he was someone who I confided in. And he seemed genuinely caring back then. And he seemed caring enough to be there for me for 8 hours at night and having a conversation over a phone call. And I pour out everything to him, like from the assault incident and what happened to me. And he was there to calm me and make me seem like I'm being cared for, I'm being heard, and he's there to support me, things like that. So that was how we first met with my then husband. Back then I was 16 and I think I'm in love when we were more serious with one another and we were frequent in meeting up one another. So I thought that I was in love back then. And then we got intimate and I got pregnant and everything just happened so fast. And without even having a proper discussion, he was just saying that, let me just get married to you now that you're pregnant. Then my family just got involved in the picture and some other elders decide for me, oh yes, Liyana can get married. In hindsight, right, as I was watching that, I looked at as a third party. I was like, where's Liyana's voice? Where was Liyana's input in all of this? Who asked Liyana even if Liyana was ready to get married or not? Because when I was like reflecting on it all, I remembered I don't want to get married. That wasn't my first solution after knowing that I was pregnant. The way that I approached that whole situation was, how can I take care of this baby while still continuing my education, at least graduating, and then what's next after that? So my line of thought was more towards that. So marriage didn't come to mind at that point.
At 16, Liyana is pregnant with her first son. She sits for her O-levels, pregnant. Then she works as a waitress, shares a cramped flat with her mother, who has quit her job to look after the baby. For a while, life seems manageable. But soon cracks begin to appear. Fazli loses his job, withdraws emotionally. When Liyana becomes pregnant again, her family is distant, not warm, and even Fazli suggests an abortion. She refuses. After giving birth to her second son, Liyana returns to work quickly, but Fazli's instability deepens. He disappears for weeks at a time, and Liyana eventually discovers he's having an affair. She asks for a divorce, only to find herself pregnant with her third child. She's now forced to return to her in-laws. And after the death of her kinder, softer father-in-law, her mother-in-law becomes really cold and hostile. Everything comes to a head on Hari Raya. She and Fazli are kicked out of the flat. She writes, I had faced the dark so many times before, but I had never seen it move the way my mother-in-law did at that moment. Her then husband borrows a tent. For the next 3 months, they live on Sembawang Beach. Liyana, her unfaithful husband, their 2 boys, and a little girl still in her room, all homeless.
So back then when we were homeless, it took me a while to even embrace the fact that I was homeless. Because to me, back then, I wasn't homeless. That situation was temporary. That was how I approached it. And it didn't occur to me that there are such things as homelessness in Singapore. Because I've not heard of it before. I've not heard of any family not having a roof over their head or not having a place to call home. And I thought that, oh, my situation was just unique just because I'm trying to salvage my marriage, just because we are in this challenging situation together. However, I am just surprised rather to discover at that moment that I wasn't alone. And there were homeless people in Singapore. Because over the course of the months that I was there by the beach, that was when I discovered other family members, other couples, other children, other mom and dad who are staying there over prolonged period of time. And some of them who have stayed there longer than before I even arrived at that park, and for God knows how long. The only thing that they were able to share and open up with me was because I was in that same plight as them, and I was looking for a way out, and I was curious to know avenues of options or solutions there may be out there. And that was when I discovered, I can't term it in any way, but I just call it as the beauty of the community of people that I met there by the beach. Though we were, whatever term or label you want to call us, homeless, displaced families was what the term that was used back then. But I don't feel it that way. I felt like there was this spirit of helping one another because we are in the same, we are almost going through the same challenges for not having a roof over our heads, for having to survive day in, day out, that we together band with one another to either salvage food from park goers or do some kind of, what do you call that? Scavenging of food from nature, from the forests, from the jungles, whatever it is that we are there. Oh, Singapore don't have jungles. Singapore have mini forests. I learned what kind of plants are edible, what kind of plants are poisonous, what kind of plants is not good for you. And that was at the moment where I was homeless, trying to survive for that day and trying to find edible food that you can eat. And the beautiful segment which I felt in this community was the generosity of the hearts, because they are so generous in sharing their time, in lending their listening ears, in lending whatever little resources that they have back then and pulling it together to share with the rest. The people I met there are either the middle to later age men who seem single because they usually ride their bikes either to fish over there or just sleep at the park on the benches of the park. And they are the ones who would oftentimes either share their catch of the day with the community, or they would just sit down, ask, inquire, hey, have you eaten? Things like that. And share resources of what they heard, what they found, or flyers about helping hands or agencies that are out there. Other than them, one very significant family is this family who have teenagers with them, a mother and father. I got to know their story about having to leave or being evicted from their HB flat because they can't continue to finance it. And that too because one of the parents had to go through a surgery and he has a bag that was placed by the side of his body when he was there at the park. That is so heart-wrenching to see, but I admire their resilience. They're staying together as a family unit and helping one another. I witnessed how their teenagers just drop out of school and then work as a part-time, I don't know, cashier or at the KFC or McDonald's fast food restaurants to help with the finances and make ends meet at that point for their family. And also with whatever little that they have, share with the other families as well. And then make it like a pool resources for everyone to have a bit of whatever there is. And then I've met like couples who are there because their parents don't approve of each other relationship and they had to come to the park because they are trying to find solutions for their own situation and find a roof over their heads as they progress in their own relationship. One of them happened to be like my best friend back then, and we like really were so close because we keep a lookout for one another. And we dive into each other's stories. We dive into the other family stories. I wouldn't say that there's only one race there. I think if we can debunk the myth or even the misplaced perception that only certain of race are there being homeless, I would say no, there are not. There are diverse races of us there. I think one thing which compelled me to write the story was that back then in 2019, I still discover these families by the beach. And I was like, this is still happening today. And no, it cannot continue this way. So that was what propelled me to write my own story. What I want people to understand is that while their situation may seem chronic, it may be temporary from phase to phase of their life. No one chooses to be homeless. No one chooses to sleep in a cold weather where you will shiver some nights and not have a restful sleep. I want people to know that while these homeless families or individuals are going through this challenging time, do know that they do not appear as how the media portrays them to be, or the stereotype of homeless people are as what it is that was reported. Okay, for example, You may think that homeless people are unkempt. At one glance, you can see, oh, they are homeless. No. The person you sit next to while you are having your dinner or something at McDonald's, that person could be homeless. They will keep themselves well-groomed. They will keep themselves smelling fresh and nice because they do not want to attract any attention onto them as they are going through this phase in their life. So I want people to know that whatever you hear or see, thought of, or even assume of about homeless people, I want you to challenge your own narrative by looking even more deeply, by being curious about the person's story.
They look like us. That's what she's trying to say. One thing that struck me about Liyana's story is how close homelessness really is. It wasn't a dramatic fall. It was a gentle nudge, a single step from belonging to being an outsider. Despite the hardship, a quiet sense of kampong spirit exists here in the park. The community helps one another survive. Tensions arise as NParks officials conduct routine checks. The group must keep reapplying for permits, always living under the threat of eviction, even moving parks to evade the authorities. They endure storms, hunger, and deep uncertainty, but they also share meals, swap stories, and even find wonder, like the day a baby python slithered into their tent for shelter. Desperate for help, Liyana walks to the Ministry of Community Development. The suggestion she receives? A backpacker hostel for maybe $12 a night. It's not a real solution. Change finally comes when two young journalists from the Online Citizen visit them at the park. Moved by her story, they write to the ministers K. Shanmugam and Vivian Balakrishnan. And soon after, Liyana receives a call from a social worker. A place is opened up in the shelter. They're moved into a 3-bedroom HDB flat shared with 2 other families. This life also was not easy, and she even missed her tent and the community of homeless. But then a small spark of hope. Liyana finds a discarded suitcase filled with yarn, beads, and cross supplies. She starts making earrings, selling them. And from there, slowly, quietly, she begins to rebuild. The details of these moments are in Liyana's book, Homeless. A hard story, yes, but sprinkled with joy and told with a touch of lyricism. But what I really want to know is, how did she come back from it? Not just practically, but mentally, emotionally. Because when you share a story of trauma, the world often wants to freeze you there, to keep circling the pain, the hardship, and I want to move past that. I want to meet Liyana in the present and to ask the harder question, how do you recover from something like this?
I think what made me find out that I need to change within first was when I tried multiple ways to find work. A single mom raising 3 children. I was trying to find a sustainable stream of income. And that means in Singapore, if I were to approach any social worker, will be to find employment, to find a job. However, the nature is that there are discrimination in the workplace. There are discriminatory hiring practices also in the workplace. I found myself being judged most time, or even when I went for job interviews, or I found myself blaming me again to be in that situation. And then I question myself, why does it seem like it's a never-ending circle? I want to get out of this circle. Like, this shouldn't be it. What I was told by the social workers back then was, oh, get a job. Once you get a job, all your problems will settle. I couldn't even get a job in the first place. Or if I would be able to get a job, I wouldn't last in that job for long because I will need to prioritize the care of my children. So I questioned that method of gaining employment and your whole problem would be solved. Like being a single mother going through a period of divorce, having to go through like court appointments while juggling the raising of 3 children, are being seen as too complex to hire. I'm seen as more of a liability rather than an asset. Okay, so on that note, I question then what else can I contribute? I think by questioning, by reflecting that, or maybe by my own discomfort of that shouldn't be it, that shouldn't be the only solution was what propelled me to find alternative avenues. And that was the start of me finding out more about, what does it mean to set up a business? What does it mean to provide a service? What can I do to earn income while still staying home and taking care of my children? How does it look like for me? What does it mean also to go into a healing journey? I know that I have past trauma because I, at that point, know that I am continuing the cycle of abuse to my kids. So the generational trauma, in a way, makes me a perpetrator. And I'm like, I need to stop this because my kids deserve better. They deserve a better mother. That was when I got myself into understanding how can I parent better. It all started with a laptop and my access to internet. That opens up the world to me. That was when I discovered Facebook. And that was when I discovered a group of Australian ladies who practices alternative healing, alternative care. So things like doing emotional frequency tapping, things like using energy healing, all that sort of things. Then I come across life coaches, business coaches, and all those sort of community. And slowly I learn all these in the while where I am still trying to get myself out of poverty, out of being looked upon as just a single mother struggling to grow her 3 children and put food on the table. Because there are many instances people would have the assumption that, you already gain employment, you have some money, you can take care of your kids, and then you are taking care of yourself. But it doesn't work that way for me. So I had to juggle the availability of opportunity for myself to be better, to cover a better version of me as I am trying to get out of that poverty of not having any job, of trying to set up my first business and trying to put food on the table. It dawned on me that if I don't look inwards and do better from what I can do, from the things within my control, not beyond my control, then things will change for me. And that was the first time where I find that I need to take care of myself in order to keep caring for my kids. That was the first in my life. I think the knowledge and the awareness of oneself really helps a lot. There are things beyond your control, as in people's biasness, people's perception of you, people's judgment of you. Those are things beyond your control. But what are within your control will be, what do you know about yourself, your strengths and your developmental areas? Because no human is perfect. I'm not perfect, even. And know that what may trigger you. And then you can find that and being mindfully aware of how you present yourself to others or how you can hold yourself in any pressure or any given situation that calls for your greater sense of patience, or any tested situation where it requires you to remain grounded and calm. If you have this form of awareness of yourself, regardless whether you're in employment or not, you will know how to carry yourself. You will know how to respond instead of react in any given situation. And you will find that conversations will appear non-confrontational. We will be less violent and people will be able to understand each other better.
As I edit this, I'm blown away by Liyana's insight. It took me years of yoga, periods of financial stability, and maybe even the pause of the pandemic to finally turn inwards and start looking at my mental health, to realize that I need tools to help me find the emotional balance to move forward in life. But Liyana flips this idea on its head. She's offering us a powerful lesson that caring for your mental health doesn't come after stability. It needs to come first. It's not a luxury. It's a tool vital for growth. I ask her what advice she might offer to others who are facing or fearing their own turning point.
So it all starts from me as I put out the intention and I swore to myself that if ever I were to receive help on this day, I will pay it forward one day when I get better. And that happens to be the day before I discovered that bag of trash with the yarns and all of that. I think that journey in itself in discovering entrepreneurship, in discovering how to manage or how to build and manage a business, in discovering how to navigate Singapore where it is okay, you just need to get a job. That is where you will get your income. But less of you need to have an entrepreneur mindset that you can create something, create solutions for people and meet a gap, meet a need, and then earn from there. So less of that, more of find a job, get money, put things in your CPF. You have a CPF that you can buy a house, things like that. When I discovered having a growth mindset, that was what keeps me in the lens of having the curiosity to continue learning. So that was one of the things that embedded in me. After swearing to do better, right, for others, I instilled in me to be a lifelong learner, to continue learning every single day. I'm looking forward to step into this next chapter of my life. I feel that is lacking right now, which is financial literacy. This company that 4 other partners of mine and myself have found is to provide this solution, a service rather, to others who will need guidance in managing of their finance, in looking long term, in preparation for whatever milestones in their life, and in even retiring or getting out of debts. So we are looking to support whoever is ready at that point with this financial literacy. Our approach starts from educating, workshops and trainings first, and then partnering up with other SSAs, hopefully, with other agencies.
Why is there this gap?
Yeah, I know, right? The interesting thing is we are so transactional. We are so transactional being someone born and bred in Singapore. We're so transactional, but at the same time, we don't know how to manage our finances. Financial literacy, or at least any form of education on how to manage your finances, is still hugely lacking here in Singapore. We are so transactional that we look to buy or spend or save instead of looking at alternative venues to either grow your income, to either manage your finances, grow your retirement saving. That means outside of CPF. Because in Singaporeans' mind right now, their retirement is only whatever that is in their CPF, which is just one portfolio. And I want them to think bigger, think more of what is available out there for them. If anyone is interested to be in this journey, or at least see it as a collective movement to educate a form of society that we wish to look for moving forward here in Singapore, then come on board with us. This is something we hope to collectively educate our growing society.
I'll add an email in the show notes, and if you'd like to reach out to Liyana directly, you should do so. Singapore is a wealthy country, and from the outside, it often looks like there's always help, always a way forward. But what I've come to notice is this: when someone falls through the cracks, it can be especially hard to find your way back in Singapore. In a place built on progress and achievement, it can feel like there's very little space for those who stumble or those who fail. And Liyana reminds us that poverty and homelessness weren't the end of her story. I ask her gently, where did she find the strength to keep going?
I think as a mother, my strive, my motivation, my goal is to create a safe space for my kids and to not anyone go through what I went through before. And I think that was my drive. I'm sorry, we need to take a pause here. Yeah. So that was my drive. It wasn't easy.
I pause here too as I edit, taking in the full weight of Liyana's journey. I want to end on a high note. I want to leave her smiling, not in tears. Through her book, there were 3 quiet characters, 3 silent witnesses to her pain, and 3 powerful reasons she kept going, her children. So I ask her about them.
I would say that my 21, soon to be 22-year-old, I'm not surprised, but I'm so proud at how he is as an individual now, who's waiting to be enlisted into national service and still trying to contribute in ways he can to the family, to his siblings, and role modeling it as well. I'm so proud of my eldest son. My second son, who is 18, 19 this year, and currently serving NS, National Service, he amazes me most time with his sense of maturity, with his sense of responsibility, with his generosity, because my second son is the kindest soul that I've known in my lifetime. He was the one, in one of his birthdays, he told me, I don't want a cake or anything else. I want you to cook for me my favorite food, which happens to be like a curry chicken. The Malay version of it, of course. We call it ayam lemak cili padi. It would be best if we can share it with the neighbors. The kindest soul, my second son. My third child, who's 15 this year, my daughter, and the one who was in me 15 years ago when I was homeless. I just thank God every single day for the many conversations we have together, for the hugs, for the kisses, for the I love yous exchanged every single day via text, via phone call, via when we meet one another. I didn't ask for nothing but that relationship to remain with me, being my daughter and me as her mother. And no matter how she grows, I really hope that continues throughout her life. And to my 5-year-old for keeping me on the toes now. We try to not splurge her with things and not spoil her with too much things. And we hope that she learn through experience as well. I would say that the only word that comes to mind now is content. I absolutely, more than 100%, am feeling so content after the conversation we have now and sharing what I can. I feel content as I get the opportunity to reflect back on life. I feel content because I get this opportunity, and thanks to you, Rani, to share what I can in the hopes that it can help someone else. Yes.
I want to thank you so much as well for sharing your struggles, but also for sharing your joy.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay! That's a good wrap up.
That joy in Liyana's voice seems impossible to me. It seems like a miracle after all that life has dealt her. And her hugs, did I mention her hugs? They're also pure joy. I'm not sure how a conversation about broken marriages, infidelity, darkness from close family members, rape, poverty, homelessness, how can a conversation like this leave me feeling hopeful? That's the power of Liyana and her journey, the ability to carry sorrow and still choose joy, and to share that joy with me, and I hope with you too. So until next time, may her story teach us to look with kindness at those around us, to not assume that Singapore's economic success has touched everyone equally. Thank you for listening. If this episode moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And join us next time as we continue telling the stories of brown women right here on The Brown Box.